else like nursery rhymes? Some people. I used to make them up for my own children, actually. I don't know. I just really, as a parent, I remember that. And they still remember them now. I'm not going to sing them because I'm slightly embarrassed. I don't know you guys well enough yet. But, they were designed to either comfort my kids or potentially put them to sleep. Those are the way I kind of used to use them. So one of the other reasons I'm not going to sing them to you this morning because I don't want you to fall asleep. So I won't do that. But I'm going to read it just as we start our time together today. I won't sing it. So I'm sure most of you know this one reasonably well. So hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's going to buy you a mockingbird. And if that mockingbird won't sing, then Mama's going to buy you a diamond ring. And if that diamond ring turns to brass, Mama's going to buy you a looking glass. And if that looking glass gets broke, Mama's going to buy you a billy goat. And if that billy goat won't pull, Mama's going to buy you a cart and bull. And if that cart and bull turn over, Mama's going to buy you a dog named Rover. And if that dog named Rover won't bark, Mama's going to buy you a horse and cart. And if that horse and cart fall down, you'll still be the sweetest little boy in town. So I don't know if there's different versions of that. Maybe you have different versions of that you might know. Even as I'm reading that, I'm kind of going, geez, there's some weird stuff in there, isn't there? Like who wants a billy goat? I don't know. I don't want a billy goat. And in fact, Billy Goat's Gruff is a story I remember as a kid that used to terrify me. So I don't know, maybe I just have a reaction to that. Mockingbird, no. Diamond ring, yep, I'll take that one. Looking glass, that could be useful too. A dog that doesn't bark, that sounds like perfect. So I don't know why you'd want to get rid of that one. So there's a lot going on here, isn't there? But, most nursery rhymes, they don't have an author and a date. We don't really know who wrote it for many of them, where they come from. But it seems the little bit of research I did on this, I'm a bit nervous with Lynn in the room in terms of research and stuff. But I confess I did have a sneaky glance at Wikipedia, which is not a great source, but there you go. But it does originate in one of the southern states, right, within America. Probably, they reckon, at the beginning of last century. And at least my limited analysis of the poem kind of engaging with it, it seems that it's designed to kind of want to put a child to sleep. And as a parent, those of us that have young kids, we know how intense that is and how desperate we want our kids to go to sleep. And this nursery, hush, little baby, don't cry. It's time to go to sleep, And there's a sense I get with this nursery rhyme that the child is restless, battling to sleep. And there's real hope that the song will calm the child as they kind of gently nod off to sleep. But, this particular nursery rhyme actually seeks not only to do this, but promises the world to this child. Right? So many benefits. And this is my reading of it, by the way, disclaimer. So many benefits if they just go to sleep, A mockingbird, a diamond ring, a looking glass, a goat, a cart, a bull, a dog, a horse. Just please go to sleep. And I don't know, I would have gone straight to sleep. That sounds like a perfect deal to me to get all those things, just pretend you're asleep. But, when you really dig into it, and I think that's why this one has been picked, I suspect who's ever been part of the team that organizes it, the subtleties here are really, really interesting in this nursery rhyme. Even if these things break, don't worry, I'm just going to get you a new one, I remember with my kids how stressful that was when we got them an iPad, when they were young or they get their phone or you buy them a toy. And have you ever been in a scenario when it breaks like the next day? Or something like that with a toy, and there's this subtle thing, I'm just going to get you another one. I was like, no, I can't really afford that. But there's this sense in our culture, if it breaks, we'll just get you something else. So there's that happening in the nursery rhyme too. But there's also even something a little bit deeper than that, around that somehow our restless nature can be soothed by getting things, right? At least that's what I see there. Sometimes our restless nature can be soothed by getting things. So now Jesus, and we've read I think it was Mary who beautifully read it for us. I think it was the passage. But we'll get to Luke in a second. But Jesus, in fact, cautions us against wanting more and more stuff. In fact, I think, it's not in my notes here, but I think Jesus spoke more about money than any other topic. I could be wrong on that. It's just coming to my brain at the moment. But I think Jesus is kind of in sympathy in some ways with a kind of a reading of this poem in this way. So in Matthew 6:19 to 21, Jesus is in sympathy with the nursery rhyme in the sense that things break, right? The stuff that we have break. He says, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So, Jesus realizes things break too. But Jesus also cuts against some of the assumptions, the deeper assumptions that may be running through this nursery rhyme, that more and more things can relieve our restlessness, right? So life isn't about how many things we have and can get. No amount of stuff will eventually hush us to sleep from the restlessness and anxiety that we all experience in life. So that's, the passage that was read, Luke 12, Jesus says, take care and be on your guard. It's like quite an active thing, hey? Like be on your guard against all covetousness or greed. I think that I wrote it down, was it in the translation? All kinds of greed, I think was the passage that Mary read. There's variations of what greed could look like. For one's life, Jesus continues, does not consist in the abundance of one's possessions. So I think I would suggest at least that in this nursery rhyme, that Jesus is warning us against the dangers of consumerism. And that's kind of what I want to focus in on today. Now, again, I've been told, both when I led a church and my students tell me I've perfected the art of the disclaimer. So I just have to throw one in quickly before I get into the details. And that is that I'm a consumeraholic. So when I'm sharing some of this stuff with you, I don't want you to hear that I've kind of got this all worked out, right? I battle with being in this culture as much as all of us do. So I just want to name that as I get into this. This is something I'm struggling with myself as I share along. So I'm going to share two main thoughts with you, and then I'm going to try give some practical suggestions of what I've tried to do in my own life in terms of thinking some of these through, and in a way that tries to take Jesus' teachings seriously, which is really hard, by the way, isn't it? I once, I've got to be really careful of rabbit trails when I've got a 25-minute time thing here, but I'll just tell you quickly, it's really, really easy to believe in Jesus, much more difficult to follow Jesus, right? I remember getting up on Sunday one time at church and said, hey guys, look, I'm just letting you know I'm done with this following Jesus. And this congregation, like, what do you mean? So I said, believing, yeah, cool, let's tick box. Yep, no problem. I can do the believing, but following, I mean, have you seriously read the Sermon on the Mount? Like, that's pretty intense. So I'm battling with that as well. But Jesus, he's telling us to be on our guard here, and I think for good reason. So the first thought I want to quickly tackle is to think about at least is, which I kind of said already, is more things can't fix our pain and longing. More things can't fix our pain and longing. And hence, Jesus' suggestion, be on your guard when it comes to wanting more and more things, is worth sitting. Why be on your guard? I mean, that's quite an active stance. Christians like to take moral positions on things. I don't know if you've found that, particularly things like sex. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about that here, but sex is something you can measure, right? So if somebody does something wrong in the area of sexuality, say sex before marriage, if that's the view that one might have, or someone else's sexuality, Christians like to take positions on that, no matter what your position is, because it's something you can measure, right? And but greed is much more difficult to measure, much more subtle, isn't it? Is it 2 SUVs, 2 flat screen TVs? This gets difficult. Let's rather not talk about it. How do we measure greed? It's a difficult one. How big a wardrobe do we have? How many clothes do we have? Do we measure ourselves against our neighbor here in Melbourne, wherever you are, or if you're in some of the other parts of Australia? Or do we measure ourselves against those that find themselves in poorer contexts, not only in Australia, but perhaps in other parts of the majority world? It becomes really difficult. And so we don't really talk about greed much in church and consumerism, So this next sentence, again, you don't have to agree with me. I always tell my students that as I go on. But this is the way I think about it, at least, is that I think we're part of a global capitalist system that is constantly marketing and advertising to us that we need more and more things. Okay, that's my kind of working assumption as I try to make my way in the world. You've probably seen this book if you've been into a bookstore called Sapiens by Yuval Harari. I'm sure you might have seen that book. Controversial, don't agree with everything he says, and he's written another book on the future, in 300 years, whatever. But he makes this interesting comment that the earliest humans might have had between 8 to 12 items in their home. Right. I think I have 8 to 12 items on my body right now. I could count, but I'd be pretty close to that, And as you I won't show you my whole library space here, but I got a lot of stuff going on here, right? So, but this advertising system is everywhere, right? Wherever you go, I don't know, sometimes if you're driving on a road, you just look around, there's advertising going on everywhere, But it's become more insidious, hasn't it? Probably the last 10 years. So it's on our phones now. It's on our computers. You do a search on something, and all of a sudden, when you're next there, something else pops up on your screen, and you go, "Oh, how did they know?" "Oh, yeah, okay, because they figured out I was, searching this area. Now this is popping out." And but it's everywhere. It's one of the reasons we didn't have a TV growing up with my kids, and that was a personal decision for a whole bunch of different reasons, was just the sheer weight of advertising that was coming through that system. So it's everywhere. And this kind of system really wants us to buy more stuff, and it wants us to buy things we don't always need, right? And the system is even a bit more trickier than that. There has something called built-in redundancy. Have you ever heard of that? So they actually build systems to not last today. I've noticed that because my blimmin' iPhone keeps conking out on my earphones. It's the left one that always goes. I don't know what it is about the left one. That's so same with washing machines, light bulbs. They're built in the system, so it actually starts breaking down at some point, so you can buy something else. There's a term for that. And so, those of you who've watched The Matrix, my daughters have started watching it, and it's so nice to watch the early versions with them because, of course, the new ones come out. I can see Rachel. Are you smiling? You're a Matrix fan, maybe not. But The Matrix is interesting, and people use it for different reasons. But I sometimes think with this global capitalist system that we're in, that we are we're almost in a matrix, and we don't even know it sometimes. It's just so hard when you're swimming in this water of life to kind of see things differently. It's hard to be content with our old phone that works sometimes, or, content with our clothes that are now slightly out of fashion, and those kinds of things. And Jesus is saying life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. Now, again, please don't hear what I'm not saying. It sounds like I've just painted a very gruesome picture about never wanting to buy stuff or engage with stuff. I love buying stuff. I love certain clothes. I love certain furniture. I love certain pieces of works of art. I think the challenge is what Jesus might be on about here is it's more about that inner state. If we think buying these things are going to make us a certain way or relieve our anxiety, that might be the challenge. They're not that things are wrong in and of themselves. You know, there's a philosopher called Alan de Botton. I think I'm pronouncing his surname right, but and he wrote a book called Architecture of Happiness, which is a really interesting book. And the book itself speaks about, you know, buying works of art aren't going to make you happy or bring out this specific, solve your problems or things like that. And he makes a comment that, one of the things the Nazis did is they stole all this famous art. And there's this picture of these amazing artworks, and there's Goering and Goebbels walking past them. Just having the right art ain't going to make you nice people, right? But to Alan de Botton's point is it actually can accentuate the very beautiful parts of who we are and what we might want to be. And that's a different angle to come at, in terms of art and things. And it's part of who we are and how we move in the world. So please don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying don't ever buy anything and that, but it's about filling that hole and buying more and more stuff. So there's also been research, something on the golden triangle of happiness. Sometimes you see that flick through ABC quite a lot. Has anybody heard of that? I think the research actually came out of Australia, but the golden triangle of happiness says that there's 3 core areas that support our well-being: strong personal relationships, some level of financial stability, and purpose in life, right? And the studies in Australia show that we get very little improvement in our well-being when we earn over $30,000 per annum. Now, that's, we all come from different spaces, but the research seems to indicate that the incremental benefit of earning more than $30,000 per annum doesn't increase our well-being massively. Up to 30,000, it actually does, but not so much over, right? But what is it about relationships and purpose, the life where things are in? I've just started reading a book by Lisa Miller, who's a professor at Columbia University, entitled The Awakened Brain. If you haven't got it, it's really worth having a look at. And she suggests that spirituality and being part of a religious community is actually protective against depression and anxiety, right? Things that obviously we would know work against our sense of happiness. And her research, particularly the recent stuff, shows that those who are involved in religious practice actually have changes in their brain structure. There's the thought. So we could delve into that a lot. But in the same way that it would be protective against areas of depression, So being part, again, you can see that part of that triangle of relationships and a sense of purpose. I think all of us have had the experience of that feeling when we buy stuff, that initial wave or high, right, that we get. But we do know that it wanes off over time. Again, I could see some people nodding. So buying more and more things ultimately doesn't fill our hole in our hearts and release us from the anxiety. And in fact can make it worse. And the difficult part of this, which leads me to my second kind of major point, is, we're never satisfied, but the further dangers of our limitless quest for more is the resourcing problem. Right? And I think Lynn actually prayed when you were praying, and I was thinking about this as well. You spoke about the resources and the way we treat the resources in our planet. So my second contention is not only does buying more and more things not fill our hole, restlessness, as Jesus said, life does not consist in the abundance of possessions, but 2, buying more and more things is likely going to destroy our planet, right? So I think, again, I read, it's not in my notes, but that we need about 8 Earths amount of resources for the whole world to live at the standard of living that the Western world live at. 8 Earths. That's a lot of resources, right? To go around. And again, I appreciate that people have different views on climate change and things like that. I'm not going to tell you what to think on that. My view is that humans are part of creating the climate crisis. That's the direction I take. And as a theologian, I tend to go the view generally with theology that I'm happy for my theology to go beyond science, but I certainly don't want it to go beneath, right, what's being communicated. So I think that the science is compelling, and that humans are responsible in some way for the climate change that's happening. And so this one of the insights of this is that our desire for more and more stuff, and think of the Industrial Revolution where this kind of explosion began to happen, is that it's really hard for us to continue that the way we're going in terms of the things that we're buying and producing to create a sustainable planet for everyone on it, right? And that's going to be tricky to do. We can see these huge rubbish dumps that we keep filling all the stuff that we keep throwing away. I think they say Australians waste 30 to 40% of what we buy from the grocers, at least. That's a staggering thought. We actually don't eat it; we throw it away. I mean, it's an amazing statistic. So I think the danger here, which wouldn't have necessarily been the case at Jesus' time, but a quest for more and more, I think will lead to planetary collapse, right? And hence, the trees of the field will not be able to clap their hands in joy to the Lord because there will be no trees with hands to clap. So, how do we as Christians, can we be part of the solution? Now, often, unfortunately, in this area, Christians tend to be more of the problem, and there's a whole thing of why that's the case, and we can't go into it today. But how do we as Christians be part of this solution and work, as Jesus would say, be on guard or work against this capitalist system and work against this idea that somehow buying more and more stuff is going to fill this hole? Well, first of all, we could probably just initially agree that more and more things aren't going to satisfy our lives. It's probably not going to make us happy. And perhaps the research, and I've just pulled a few strings together today, supports this. And perhaps we need to take the pill in the matrix, I forget which color it is, to wake up and realize that we do find ourselves in this system, and we actually need to be on guard, as Jesus is saying that we should be. So we need to own our own anxiety and restlessness. Instead of pretending that it's not there, just maybe a first step is admitting it and trying not to fall asleep on it. Don't be succumbed by the nursery rhyme. Don't be succumbed by the advertising system, and try to think of practices and behaviors that would seek to cultivate a relationship with God rather to fill that hole and that anxiety. So, Romans 14:17, Paul uses this. The kingdom of God is not only about eating and drinking, but about justice, peace, and joy. By the way, there's still eating and drinking there, which is really great, particularly if you're going to Provence, guys. But it's not only about eating and drinking, but it's about justice. Wow. I mean, we prayed for the Uluru statement, didn't we, earlier? Isn't that beautiful? Peace, not just peace with God. It's actually that Hebraic word shalom, which encompasses all the socio-political things that we're involved in, all aspects of our life. And joy. The kingdom of God is about these things. Philippians 4:17, the peace of God surpasses all understanding, and that will guard, remember this word again is coming up, Paul's using it this time, not Jesus, guard our heart and mind in Christ Jesus. So my challenge to myself and to you guys is find time in your day. This is about being on guard, in your day, if you can. I know we all have, life is full. I mean, I already told you what I do when I wake up in the morning. God doesn't exist until I have my first cup of coffee. No, that's not true. But, find time for meditation. Find time for prayer in your day. See if you can cultivate your spirituality. People do that in different ways. We'll come from most of us maybe here from the Church of Christ tradition, but there's lots within the Christian tradition that we can use as a resource in terms of connecting to God, right? So meditation, prayer. I read a lot of John O'Donoghue. I don't know if anybody's come across his material, Celtic mystic. Again, some people are nodding. I've just been to the west of Ireland and come back from his area, and we went past his grave, which which wasn't planned, but there you go. So, what are the practices in our individual lives that we can cultivate, in a sense, to be on God, to realize that buying all those things is just not going to fill our anxiety and restlessness, but perhaps God can. That will surpass our understanding as a way of being on God. Second one is find a faith community to be a part of. Now, I'm speaking to the converted here. I realize that, right? In this sense. But at least realize how important it is. And the research is showing this, as Lisa Miller from Columbia University has demonstrated quite convincingly. And the Golden Triangle, that was more broadly around relationships. But her research is actually faith communities and spiritualities particularly, which is really interesting. So, being part of a faith community fosters relationship with others, but also provides a protective factor against depression and anxiety. It also provides purpose, which is one of the other parts of that Golden Triangle that I mentioned earlier. The practices that we've even done here today, we sang together, didn't we? That song by Matt Redman from Soul Survivor. We prayed together. Terry led us in communion together. These are practices within a faith community that shape us in a way that we can positively participate in God's kingdom. It's not an end in itself. It's a way that we come together to foster relationships, connect, find a sense of purpose. But then, as Paul said, we go out and we bring justice, we bring peace, and we bring joy. And these practices that we're doing together right now is part of that. So I think I'm talking too long. I think I've got 2 more minutes. I'm going to give a few little thoughts that I think might be helpful. So how do we be on guard and fight against the matrix global capitalist system? That sounds dramatic. So just a few little things that I've found helpful. Take them or leave them for yourself. Buy sustainable if you can. Patch your clothing if you can. Sometimes I know it's a bit weird, but shop secondhand if you can. Sometimes, not all the time. I get it. I saw something in Dublin that I just said I have to have. That's me. Yeah. So be kind to yourself. God's not angry with us, but on the whole, see if we can cultivate more and more of these practices in terms of buying secondhand and asking, do I really need that 5th coat? Or something like that. So it's just a question that we ask ourselves. Doesn't mean we won't buy it, but ask the question. 2, eat sustainably. That's a bit more controversial perhaps for some. If you want, I can send you some of the research that I've written and published in that space. For me, that's been about eating less meat for a whole bunch of different reasons. And we can go into, we can't go into that. We don't have time. But if you want, you can email me and I can send you some of the stuff that I've written on why that's important as well. Thirdly, use public transport when you can. Hard in Australia. I get it. We're trying. Easier in Europe. You can get a train from Paris to Provence, can't you, in 3.5 hours? But I keep talking about Provence. You can see I really want to go back there. Anyway, 4, just ask yourself the simple question, do I need this or do I want this? It's not bad to want something, but just ask yourself that question, because sometimes we get those confused. I'm getting there. I'll close in a second time. If I want this, so that's the 5th thing. If I want this, why do I want this? Would just be a useful next step. Why do I actually want this? I'm a Nottingham Forest supporter and they've just got back to the Premier League after 20 years. I really want a Nottingham Forest jumper, and I bought one, just to admit that publicly. Do I need it? Probably not. But just kind of have those kind of questions. And then 6, something that I've tried to do, finding it more and more hard to do, is a Sabbath, right? try and step away from our devices or your work, whatever that is. The Romans didn't like that the Jewish people did that. They called them lazy. But this is crucial. I can't, for me, this is crucial. Eugene Peterson wrote The Message. He says we should try start our Sabbath in the same way as the Jewish people did the night before, so 5 p.m., whatever it is. Can we close our computer for 24 hours? I don't know. I find that hard. And stepping away and we go to sleep, Eugene Peterson says, sleeping, and God sustains the world. So that's the first part of the Sabbath. God sustains the world. And then we live as if our work is done. I mean, how hard is that? So it is hard. Sorry, I'm not saying how hard is that. It is hard, but that's part of the Sabbath. So those are things, the danger if we do some of these things that I've just said without tackling the spiritual practices, we're just going to get hard on ourselves and get overly restless and anxious. We have to have that spiritual component of our practice, our meditation and stuff, while we do those actions. So it's contemplation and action working together. Each and of themselves are not the full picture, but particularly if you just try to do all these things, we'll burn out and lose the sense of purpose that we're going. So cultivate your spirituality and find and participate in a faith community. Final comments is we don't want the baby to be hushed, right? We want the baby to wake up and realize that more and more things won't soothe it. And this advertising message, who's ever trying to pull us to sleep, they don't really care about us. They really care about themselves and their bottom line. And the capitalist system wants us to fall asleep in a moment, right? And succumb to that. But ultimately, though, it knows we're going to stay restless and anxious, and it builds stuff into the system to make sure that we do. But Jesus reminds us that in this life we will have trouble. We will have trouble. We will have trouble. We will have trouble, just to emphasize that. But take heart, because I've overcome the world, is what Jesus says, right? So trouble, yep, this is it. We know life is difficult. M. Scott Peck, first sentence of his beautiful book, The Road Less Traveled. Life is difficult, right? But take heart, I've overcome the world. So let's be on our guard, but let's do it in a way where we take serious our own spiritual journey for ourselves, but also participate in a faith community in terms of cultivating relationships and purpose as we go along. God bless you all.